Welcome back to the Chill Stoic, where we explore inner peace and grounded strength amidst the beautiful chaos of life. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into one of the most quietly painful experiences in the journey of healing: the guilt of letting go. You've probably been there, that moment where your heart finally speaks louder than your fear, when you stop rationalizing the hurt and you start choosing your peace. You draw a line. Maybe you walk away. Maybe you block the number. Maybe you sit in silence instead of chasing an apology that never came. And just when you think you're finally stepping into freedom, a subtle whisper echoes in your mind. Was I too cold? Was that selfish? Should I have explained more? Did I give up too soon? That whisper isn't your truth. That's your conditioning. It's the remnants of a world that taught you love must always endure, that forgiveness means proximity, and that walking away is weakness. We grew up in systems that glorified self-abandonment in the name of compassion, where the highest virtue was giving someone endless chances, even when it cost you your sanity, your dignity, your joy. So when you finally choose yourself, guilt tries to creep in. But I need you to hear this. You are not selfish for leaving what was slowly breaking you. You are not cruel for removing yourself from a situation that drained your spirit. You are not cold for choosing clarity over chaos. Letting go isn't the absence of love, it's the presence of wisdom. The moment you realize that no matter how much you love someone, you cannot carry their growth for them. You cannot rewrite their patterns with your patience. You cannot bleed yourself dry hoping they'll finally see your worth. Because real healing often begins the moment you stop fighting to be seen by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. We confuse detachment with cruelty. We fear that walking away makes us cold. But Stoicism teaches us something very different. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And that includes how others interpret your peace. That includes the stories they make up about your silence. You do not need to explain the pain you felt to people who never cared to understand it while you were living it. You do not need to beg for validation to justify your escape from dysfunction. You were there. You felt it. That's enough. Sometimes, guilt is not a sign that you've made the wrong decision. It's the echo of the version of you that was addicted to being liked. The version that thought being the bigger person meant tolerating disrespect. The version that believed love was measured by how much you could endure. But now you've grown, and growth brings silence. Not the silence of suppression, but the silence of self-trust. The quiet knowing that you don't need to explain your evolution to people who are still committed to their old narratives. Let's bring this into something real. Say you've cut off someone who kept crossing your boundaries. They mocked your feelings, they dismissed your needs, they only showed up when it benefited them. And now, the whispers start. Mutual friends asking, "Was it really that bad? Couldn't you have just talked it out?" But they weren't there when you cried yourself to sleep, wondering if you were asking for too much. They weren't the ones who held your breath every time the phone lit up, afraid it was another manipulation disguised as affection. They weren't there when you waited for change that never came, again and again. So no, you don't owe anyone a play-by-play. You don't owe them the behind-the-scenes footage of your pain. You don't need to craft an airtight narrative to justify why you chose to protect your peace. You don't need a courtroom to defend your healing. What you need is space to remember that peace is not passive. It's a radical choice in a world that normalizes chaos. Detachment doesn't mean you never cared. It means you cared enough to stop the cycle. It means you loved yourself enough to say, "This is not love. This is survival dressed in attachment, and I deserve more than survival. I deserve joy. I deserve freedom. I deserve relationships where I don't have to shrink to be safe." Here's something most people never tell you. You can forgive someone and never speak to them again. You can let go of resentment and still choose distance. You can love who they were and accept that who they've become no longer deserves access to your heart. That's not bitterness. That's boundaries in motion. That's self-respect expressed through silence. And it's not only okay, it's sacred. We often agonize over how our actions look from the outside. Will they think I'm heartless? Will they call me dramatic? But Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic minds, reminds us, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Your pain is often magnified by the stories you tell yourself about what it means to walk away. And those stories can be rewritten. Imagine yourself standing on a mountaintop, looking down at the road you just walked. You see your footprints, some strong, some shaky, some soaked in tears. You see the path they chose too, twisting away from yours, at times intersecting, at times disappearing into distance. And as you look down, you realize something profound. You could not have walked both paths. Choosing your own meant letting theirs go. And that choice, painful as it was, saved you. When guilt arises, ask yourself, am I mourning the person or the potential I assigned to them? Am I missing the reality or the fantasy I built, hoping they'd become someone who could love me the way I needed? Because hope without evidence turns into self-betrayal, and you have betrayed yourself enough. From now on, choose peace. Choose relationships that feel like calm, not chaos. Choose silence that feels empowering, not punishing. Choose detachment, not because you don't care, but because you care too much to keep breaking yourself into pieces for someone else's comfort. Letting go is not a sign of weakness. It's the ultimate display of strength. To release what you once held dear and walk into the unknown without bitterness, that is the mark of someone who has done the inner work. That is the courage of someone who no longer fears being misunderstood. And if the guilt returns, because it will, in quiet moments, like a shadow whispering, "What if?" meet it with compassion, not shame. Let it pass like a cloud. Let it rise and fall without attaching to it. Remind yourself, I did the best I could with what I knew, and now I know better. That's not cold, that's conscious evolution. So as you continue on your journey, remember this. You don't need their apology to find your closure. You don't need their understanding to validate your experience. You don't even need them to acknowledge the damage they caused. You only need one thing, your own permission to move forward. And that, my friend, is already within you. The peace you seek isn't at the end of a conversation with someone who hurt you. It's in the quiet decision to stop explaining your worth to those who never saw it. It's in the moment you finally exhale and say, "This chapter is closed," not because I hate them, but because I love myself enough not to reopen what nearly destroyed me. As the Stoics teach us, we cannot control what others think, say, or do, but we can control how long we allow their actions to live in our minds, our bodies, our hearts. Peace begins the moment we stop giving our energy to things we can't change and start channeling it into the life we can. So let this be your reminder. Letting go is not the end of love. It's the beginning of liberation, a sacred return to yourself. And in that return, you'll find everything you were always looking for: clarity, calm, and the quiet power of knowing you no longer need to earn your worth. Thank you for joining me today on the Chill Stoic. If this episode helped you see your own journey more clearly, consider sharing it with someone who may still be holding on in silence. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the show so you never miss a moment of reflection, strength, and serenity. Until next time, keep choosing your peace, keep honoring your boundaries, and most of all, keep walking in the quiet power of your own truth. You're not selfish for letting go. You're free.